listen for the whistle and I lie awake and wait. I wish the railroad didn't run so near. Cause the rattle and the crackle of that old fast freight is always singing music in my ear. Go bum again, go bum again, go bum again, go bum again, go bum again. Hear the whistle blow, hear the whistle blow. If you go, you can't come back. I'll take a trip to Texas or maybe Mexico and meet a pound or two along the way. Cause the wheels are making music in that valley down below. Go bum again is what they seem to say. Go bum again, go bum again, go bum again. Hear the whistle blow, hear the whistle blow. Lickety-clack, wheels are saying to the lickety-clack, lickety-go, you can't come back. If you go, you can't come.
All right, folks, just waiting for people to get in here for a second. We'll give it a couple of, maybe 1 or 2 more minutes, and then we'll get started. Thank you all for joining. I hope you can hear me. Megan, give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Nice, great. Well, we might as well start right now. So thanks y'all for joining us. This is our first live stream. We're going to be doing this every Friday at this time. We're calling it office hours, which is a familiar riff on our old happy hour bar hours that we used to do. And yeah, so this is, if you're familiar with our podcasts at the beginning of our podcast era, I suppose, we would put out a podcast every Monday that was kind of a variety show. I would have on each contributor to talk about one of the things they wrote over the past week. This is going to mirror that format. So this week we've got Megan coming on to talk about some of the stuff she wrote in the Nashville section. In particular, the so-called drag bill that's gotten a lot of attention over the past months. Jared is going to come on to talk about the Folk Medicine Festival in Red Boiling Springs, Tennessee. Red Boiling Springs is an interesting town if you're not familiar with it. He'll get into some of the history of that and what the Folk Medicine Festival is. It's a lot more interesting than it sounds, I promise you that. Miles is going to come on to talk about the recent coaching changes at the Nashville Predators. And Tom Landstreet is going to come on to talk about the debt ceiling and what the ramifications for that on financial markets. So before we do that, I kind of wanted to give a brief history of the Pamphleteer and talk more generally. Sorry, there's a guy knocking at my door right now, but I'm just going to ignore him. We're going to talk more generally about the state of local media, and you can hear my dog. The Pamphleteer started, weirdly enough, almost 2 years ago to the day. This morning, we put out our 500th newsletter, which I'll just pull up right here real fast for you. Issue number 500, weirdly enough. So 2 years to the day on the 500th newsletter, we launched this new live stream production. If you haven't subscribed to our newsletter, you should do that. That's our main product or main way to communicate with people. We send these out every single morning. It's a nice and clean design. This morning we had Mike Wolf, one of our food critics, went to Kalamata's, which is an excellent Mediterranean spot in Green Hills, kind of an old school staple if you've never been there. Here's Megan's section that we'll go over here shortly. We aggregate headlines, we aggregate real estate development news. We've got a nice spiffy event calendar. Jared puts together a weekly film rundown with all new movies coming out that weekend if you like to get out and see a movie. And then here are the newsletters we put out over the past week. So we put a lot of effort and care into putting together these newsletters. So if you're not on the list, you need to get on it. If you know me from Instagram, you'll be familiar with that refrain. So yeah, the Pamphleteer was kind of a response to a local media environment in which there was no oppositional presence to what I would describe as increasingly progressive media outlets such as the Nashville Scene, WPLN, the Tennessean. The media landscape in in Nashville and the state of Tennessee is fairly skewed. There are a number of there's Tennessee Star, there's Tennessee Conservative News that offer contrary perspectives on things. But in the city of Nashville, there's not really anyone focused on the city itself that presents another side to issues. So that was kind of what we set out to do. And we didn't set out to break news. We set out to operate in the cultural space, much like the Nashville scene. So we have never broken news. We never will break news. We analyze news, provide perspective on news. We do editorial stuff. We're increasingly doing more video, as you will find out. This being, kind of our first foray into that. In addition to some more video stuff that we'll put out on our Instagram and that kind of thing in the coming months. But the Nashville scene was kind of the blueprint. I had done 2 prior projects. One focused around live music in Nashville. It was called Showgrid. It was just a newsletter that I would send out every week that would lay out that week's who was playing in town for the week and that kind of thing. It was moderately successful, as all side hustles can be. And after that, I did something called the Nashville Note, which was similar. And the Pamphleteer is kind of the culmination of both of those projects. Came a couple of years after I'd kind of given up on working in the local media space, but that's where we are. So local media in general is in a tough spot because, as many of you probably know, with the advent of the internet, ad revenue goes to Google and Facebook and not to local media outlets. When Bruce Doby and Albie Del Favaro started the Nashville scene back in the mid 90s, I think it was early 90s, what they were buying was a distribution route for what was at the time a shopping magazine that would just list sales at various department stores across town. They took that existing distribution network where it was placed, whether it be at a coffee shop or at a wherever, and they started adding editorial content to it. And by the time the internet emerged, they got out just in the nick of time as they started to see their ad revenue dive, as most of it started going to Facebook and Google. So since that time, local media has been in this kind of weird space where it's tried to innovate on various business models. No one's figured it out. Most outlets in town, for example, run off donations. The Tennessee Lookout, if you're familiar with them, they are funded by a nonprofit that's based out of DC. They fund a number of similar properties across the country. WPLN is obviously public radio. They work off federal grants and donations. Axios has just raised a ton of venture capital money and was recently bought by Cox Communications. I mean, they're probably operating, I don't know their financial situation, but I imagine that it's not great, as most other local media outlets are. And the Tennessean, famously, as we know, is watching its readership slowly dwindle into dust. There was actually some numbers that just came out recently that showed that I think the paid subscribers for the print edition of the Tennessean was down to 2,000 readers, which is about as many people as read the Pamphleteer. So, we're right up there with the, as the old guard falls, the new guard rises. So that's where we're headed. And this, I don't think, the Tennessean probably couldn't put together a live stream on a whim in a week and then plan to do it for the next, because they probably have to go through all these checks and balances and that kind of thing. But we're nimble, we're young, so we can afford to do that. That's all I got to say about that. So next I'm going to bring up Megan to talk to us about what's been going on in, we'll let her tell us. Megan, let's bring you up.
Hey.
Hey, Megan, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, this is exciting. I love apple flowers.
I see you every day, but it's great to see you here in the digital world. So there's supposed to be a ruling today on challenges to Tennessee's so-called drag bill. So what's going on with that?
So we had heard through different outlets out of Memphis, Tennessee, there is a bill, the drag bill, which is, well, not really a drag bill. It is SB3, and it has to do with prurient performances. So, salacious or over-sexualized performances. And SB3 specified cabaret performances in this, and they use verbiage that kind of directed its focus on some of these performances that we've seen in places like Knoxville and places like Memphis, where it's 18 and under are allowed to just come. It's actually promoted as a family-friendly affair, and it borders on this salacious or over-sexualized material area. So that is up in court. There's a lawsuit going on right now. It was put forward by Friends of George's, which is a troupe of performers that basically sued Tennessee, which we're kind of used to now. We see the state being sued left and right, but they sued Tennessee, and originally the judge put a stay on the law from taking effect, which basically just means that it doesn't take effect, and he held this until May 26th. So last week, that stay was lifted. So technically, SB3 is now in effect in the state of Tennessee as we actually await his final opinion on this court case.
It's in action right now, which is why we've seen some of the cabaret performances, as they're called, withdrawn from various events, right?
Withdrawing and in general, just freaking out. And, it is the start of Pride Month, and there was the organizer for Nashville Pride came out and was expressing that they're in a tizzy and a frenzy, trying to make sure that everything that they're doing is within the legal boundaries, which is really interesting. And I want to touch on this because as we await for this decision, which was, it doesn't, I don't know if it's actually going to come out today. That is what the lawyer who was the lawyer for Friends of George's was saying, that he expected this to be decided today, but we might not see it for a little while. It's a complicated case once you start looking into the hearings that took place last week. So going back to that Nashville Pride Festival organizer, he came out and was expressing that they're trying to take precautions to ensure they are operating within the boundaries of SB3. Of course, during the actual hearing, the judge, who is Judge Parker, he asked for the defense, which is the state, to come up with some evidence that the ban as written served a purpose that is not already covered by the state's existing indecency laws. And apparently the state couldn't come up with any examples, basically saying that these laws are in place, but we've seen people upset that they don't really feel like they're being enforced, hence the reason that SB3 was passed this legislative session. So it begs the question.
It seems to be a national trend too, because I saw that the Pentagon canceled their third annual drag show performance for Pride Month, earlier, I guess a few weeks ago. And a lot of the local coverage around this centers this on the inability of them to perform drag in public places, right? That's what but was there ever drag in public places?
No, in fact, if you listen to, Senator Johnson, who was one of the main sponsors of the bill, it's not written in a way that drag was banned from the state. It was specifically about this, what they call prurient performances, is that hypersexualized type of performance that you can just walk in public. Anybody can just walk right into, which was the problem that they were seeing at some of these family-friendly drag events. So there was no intention. And even Mulroy, who is the DA in Memphis, came out initially with this, when this lawsuit came out and initially said that he didn't expect that this law would actually result in any arrests in Memphis. And that's a whole other thing that we could talk about, but because clearly if these laws are on the books, we're not actually arresting anybody. We're not doing anything about it. And so why is that? And why now are all of these performers and these organizers of these Pride events, why are they now freaking out if this is already something that's supposed to be, why are they now worried that they're going to break the law if supposedly this is already a law? And why weren't they concerned before about the type of content that they were just letting anybody have access to, including underage adolescents? So that's the big takeaway here is why all of a sudden are you worried now when clearly something is amiss as far as what kind of material.
What was the Lizzo thing? Lizzo had a concert and they did drag and it wasn't age restricted. Was that before the law was in place? I mean, God forbid I ever end up at a Lizzo concert. Might as well just put 2 bullets in my head.
It wasn't that. It was that she went to Knoxville and made a statement basically inviting drag performers to come on stage and do basically, you know, a runway, which is not illegal, but she was making a specific statement that, you know, we do not stand for this SB3 drag ban. This reminds me a lot of the stuff that we heard in Florida, like the don't say gay bill. What is really going on in this bill isn't exactly how they've been publicizing it. So they made it seem like these people were just now they're excommunicated from existing in public, you know, and that's not true. It was just a frustration amongst constituents in Tennessee where they didn't feel like they were being protected and that these parameters were being upheld the way that the law is currently enforced.
It would be really bizarre, I have to say, to like show up to a bookstore or a restaurant or whatever venue that these things happen in and just stumble upon one of these things. That would scar me. Hey, okay, so there's the big ruling coming down today. Let's refresh us on that, and then because we do have a little bit of time, I want to pull up your I know we didn't plan this, but I got all these fancy toys here. I want to pull up your graveyard video and let's talk.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll see if this ruling comes out today. I'm not really certain, but it will make a difference depending on how this judge tries to come out and word his opinion, because I think that the catch-22 here is that on one hand, Friends of George's are saying that this is a violation of our constitutional rights, including our First Amendment rights. It's discriminatory. But then on the other hand, the judge came out saying that, you know, it's unconstitutional to have a vague law. And so, okay, this law is very specific. And because it's specific, it's discriminatory. But this law is also very vague, and so it's also unconstitutional because it can't be upheld. It's such a catch-22, and it's exactly why we've seen problems with actually the enforcement of these prurient laws that are already on the books. But yeah, let's go over to the Mount Olivet, because
Megan earlier this week about Mount Olivet cemetery, and there's this nice little video. I figure we just share that before we move on. Jared, I'm just going to cue that up. Let's see here. Bam. So you should be able to hear this.
Join me on a tour of Mount Olivet Cemetery. Established in 1856, Mount Olivet is a garden cemetery only about 3 miles from downtown Nashville. It's one of my favorite places to visit. It's beautiful. There's so much history and culture reflected in this cemetery. And I sat down with the groundskeeper to check in about some downed obelisks that we noticed, and also got to chat with the resident historian. So if you want to read more about it, definitely check out the article. You can find the link in our bio. This cemetery is a 10/10 recommend. You should definitely check it out.
Very nice.
Favorite places to go. So I think that anybody who's interested in just getting a little piece of history should visit it. And yeah,
it's just east of downtown.
Yeah, not far from downtown at all.
All right. Well, Megan, thanks for joining us. Appreciate all you do. We'll see you next week.
I'll see you guys next week.
All right. All right, guys. Well, that was Megan Podsiedlik. Megan does if you didn't know, Megan does the Nashville section of our newsletter every morning. So you can see her work in the Nashville section of the newsletter. Next, I'm bringing up Jared Hollyfield. Jared is a frequent contributor. Recently, this week, he put out an article on the Folk Medicine Festival in Red Boiling Springs, Tennessee. Red Boiling Springs is a pretty interesting place, as we'll learn from Jared. Here's the article. If you haven't seen it, I'm going to go ahead and bring Jared on. Jared, thanks for joining us.
How's it going?
Pretty good. We're looking at your article right now. It really pops off the page.
I just love the sign. And it has actually the sign when you enter town. So
yeah. All right. Well, so before we talk about the festival itself, you mentioned some interesting history in the article. So why don't you tell us a bit about the town of Red Boiling Springs? Because it sounds like kind of one of these forgotten backwater towns that's just been neglected, even though it's got this, I mean, it's got a very rich history.
Yeah, so I live in right outside of Carthage in a very rural part of the state in Smith County, and it's even out there for me. So it got started as kind of a small township, and then they found a spring underneath the town that was, it had red water and black water. And this was around the time of the Gilded Age. So suddenly Red Boiling Springs became this place, kind of like Sundance, Park City, Utah, where people would just go who were wealthy, who were politicians in the state. Woodrow Wilson actually went to take a soak there. John C. Brown, the governor, died there. And the reason he died of a hemorrhage is they couldn't get to him in time because it took 3 hours to get from Nashville because no interstates. So it was a really hot spot for very influential people all around the state and the nation. And that lasted until the early 1900s. If you think back to the time of Prohibition, whenever we had gangsters who had to go to a small town to kind of wait for the heat to go off of them, they go to places like Red Boiling Springs or Hot Springs, Arkansas. And the Depression and then the interstate system really sort of killed that aspect of the town. So it's always really hovered at about 1,000 residents, but it is also one of my favorite places to go in Tennessee. And one of the reasons is this festival that happens the first weekend of every June.
And it's grown in popularity over the past the town itself. Well, okay. So first of all, how do you get to the town? Do I take 20? Do I take 40 east towards Knoxville?
Yeah, you start going toward Knoxville, and then you will get off, probably exit like 258, maybe a little bit sooner. And it's about 80 minutes from the center of Nashville. So if you're coming from the eastern part of the state, it's probably about 50 minutes, an hour from like Cookeville and almost 2 hours from Knoxville. But it's well worth the trip, I think.
Gotcha. Great. Well, okay. So you're going there this weekend for the Folk Medicine Festival.
Yes.
And I'm going to pull up their Facebook page here real fast. We got so many bells and whistles in this nice little streaming software. It's hard not to want to use them all. I mean, I know looking at a web page is no different. You're kind of like looking at a web page, but it's still fun for me. You know what I noticed on this screen is this guy. Check out our dust. Be a part of the preservation. So you're in your article, you kind of talk about Red Boiling Spring, the Folk Medicine Festival in particular, as a reflection of the culture in Red Boiling Springs and how it's distinct from other festivals of this kind that are kind of get hollowed out by the tourism industry. This is kind of a persistent theme that we talk about a lot, honestly, is how like the demands of tourists just kind of strip away any regional differences. I mean, we've seen that in Nashville. Like when I think of the Marriott, I think of just the pinnacle of characterless. Like that hotel could be anywhere, and you go to the top and you eat at Bourbon Steak. I mean, that could be in Vegas, that could be in Atlanta, it could be in, I mean, in any moderately sized city. It could be in Milwaukee. So yeah, so sorry.
More to the point, I was in Durham, North Carolina, and kind of making a road trip through that aspect of the South a couple weeks ago. And I would stop at like a local small business, gift shop or boutique or something like that. And you'd find the same stuff that you'd find in Franklin or some of the Draper James kind of businesses in 12 South. So there is this marketability of the South, the Joanna Gaines, Bless Your Heart t-shirts, that sort of stuff is really everywhere. And it's, kind of a false narrative. It's sort of, that's the mass produced version of the South that tourists want to go to. Kind of a sidebar of that is a lot of festivals are the same way. And think about that old Bill Burr joke about him punching muffins. I don't know if you've heard it or not. No. One of my favorite comedy bits of all time. But he's talking about going to a farmer's market and there's like the muffin person and there's the candle person and the soap person. And that's what you really get if you go to a lot of festivals around the state, is kind of the same types of vendors. And I'm sure that's the same way it is in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, anywhere else. What's really cool about Red Boiling Springs, and also what was really cool about the Pickle Festival in Cookeville that I covered, about a month ago, is you didn't have that. You actually had people who were practitioners, people who were demonstrating the old ways in the case of Red Boiling Springs, people that had other concerns. Red Boiling Springs is really cool because it's an actual lifestyle festival. So you'll find herbalists, you'll find people that know the land, that are able to sort of talk about homesteading and talk about how to get back to the land and the remedies that happened in the 19th century that are still relevant today. So it's one of those distinct festivals as opposed to just going somewhere and getting a corn dog. I think you're muted.
I am muted.
Gotcha.
Is this the kind of place you would go where they would stick leeches on you or that kind of thing? Like, how folky do we get?
No, I mean, I think mostly like they're selling seeds. You will find some people who have goat farms and are selling their various wares from that. There is the Barefoot Farmer who I talk about in the article, who's
Jeff
this
Poppin.
dude that runs a homesteading place and he gives talks, herb walks. So it's not like hippy dippy. It's more along the lines of getting back to the land, being self-sufficient, against big pharma, not just taking a pill for everything, getting out and enjoying the sunshine. So it's not out there. It's probably what our grandparents and great grandparents lived on a daily basis.
Gotcha. Great. And it's this weekend.
Yep. Tomorrow, starting at I think 9 a.m.
So when are you going to get out there?
Probably as early as I can. I know last year we went a little late and a lot of the vendors were not around. One of the cool things that's also happening this year that they just started last year is a junior bluegrass competition. So I think that's going to have a pretty wide reach across the region of families coming that have children that are playing bluegrass music. So it's open, I think, to 6 to 17.
Oh, great.
So that's going to be an extra draw. I think the herb walk is like right at the beginning. So I wouldn't advise getting there at like noon or 1, even though stuff will still be going on. I would definitely get out there as early as possible whenever they open.
So yeah, the buzz line here is that that if you want an authentic experience that's different than your standard kind of touristy thing, then Red Boiling Springs and the Folk Medicine Festival is the thing for you.
Yeah, and I don't know if they're going to have them again this year, but they had some fans, like, actual old school popsicle stick fans from the 1980s they were giving out last year, because this festival started in 1980 and it kind of collapsed and fell out of favor in 1990. And then there's a group called Vision 2020 that live in the town. And this is something that's really going on in small towns across the South. How do we revitalize our area whenever, coal has left or manufacturing has left? So they brought it back. So there's definitely this retro vibe going on. And like this fan is just gorgeous. So I hope I'm not talking that up too much, but they had a lot of the stuff from the 1980s and 90s festivals still available that were kind of holdovers they'd found, which was pretty cool too.
Very cool. You want to watch this Bill Burr Evil Muffin Thoughts? Is that the joke?
Yes. I think that would be kind of great because that really typifies what it's like just to go to a random festival. I don't know about the language in it, but I guess that doesn't matter.
No, come on. Hold on. I hope this works. Let's see here. I've never done a full. All right, let's do this, and then we'll go full screen. Nice. Hell yeah.
My girl took me to a street fair recently, right? You guys have street fairs out here? They close off the block. There's like shawarma. There's like stuff made out of buttons, right? People with no teeth are making keychains, right? It's a typical girlfriend idea. It sucks, and it's going to take all Saturday, right? She's all excited. She's like swinging my arm. Oh my God, this is going to be great. I'm like praying for lightning, maybe some like scaffolding to fall down on me, No, we show up, right? The first thing she sees is this big table and nothing but homemade jewelry, right? Homemade jewelry. It's got twigs, macaroni in it. It's a table of crap. It's crap. The whole thing is crap. But she loves it. She's like, oh my God, look at these earrings. Do you like these? Do you think these are nice? I just want to be like, no. If they were nice, they'd be in a store, all right? There'd be a roof, some sort of structure would be built around this. This is crap. This is just a table of crap. The guy's even wearing shoes. That's a good indication that this is crap. But I didn't want to ruin a day, so I'm like, yeah, go ahead, check it out. I'm going to go get some air. Even though we're outside, I think there's more air to be had, right? So I walk like 3-4 tables away, and I come up to this lady. She got this big table of nothing but muffins. Muffins, right? It's like 85 degrees out. She's selling muffins, and she's got this big stupid, look at the muffins I made. Look on her face. And the second I saw that part of my brain was just like, dude, what would happen if you just walked up and just said, hey, lady, these your muffins? Oh, yeah? And I just started going, blam, 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 blam. Like, how many of these muffins could I mush before anybody did anything? I mean, realistically, I think I could have got the whole table.
Yeah, so that is not the Folk Medicine Festival at all.
All right, man. Yeah, that's funny stuff. I haven't seen a Bill Burr skit in a while. That was a good refresher on what's going on with Bill Burr. All right, well, Jared, that's all we got you slotted for today. So I appreciate you. I put a link to Jared's article on the Folk Medicine Festival. Be sure to check it out. It's Saturday. They've got a Facebook page. They've got an Instagram page. You can get information on our website about it if you scroll down to Jared's article. But yeah, Jared, thanks for coming on.
All right, have a great weekend.
Yep. Have fun at the festival. All right, next I'm bringing up Miles Harrington. Miles is going to chat with us a bit about the recent coaching changes at with the Nashville Predators. If you didn't know, their old coach was fired and they've just hired a new one. So we're going to bring Miles on right now to talk about it. Miles, how you doing?
Hey, Davis. Thanks for having me on. Got to apologize first thing. Battling a little bit of the head cold, so trying to fight through that.
All right. Well, just don't sneeze on the camera. I think we'll be fine.
Right. No waterfalls here today.
Yeah. So I like you got the festive arrangement behind you. That's good.
Got my double number 9s.
Oh wow. Yeah. That's
to Steve McNair and then Philip Forsberg right above me. My favorite Nashville Pred.
Well, cool. So the Preds just fired their coach, and they hired a new one. So fill us in. Tell us what's going on there.
Yeah, absolutely. So really, the first thing that comes to mind when thinking about this change is really the energy that I think this turnover's going to have. We had John Hines in for a few years, and I think most of Pred Nation knows he wasn't the guy. We were kind of stuck in above average mediocrity, I want to say. Yeah, he made the playoffs 9 straight years, but never really felt that we were going to take that next step and finally bring home the first cup. So bringing in a guy like Andrew Brunette, who has history with the Preds, who has history with Trotzy, our new GM, coming in. Barry Trotz taking over for our great all-time GM, David Pulley. And coincidentally enough, David Pulley drafted Andrew Brunette 30 years ago to the Washington Capitals. And Brunette was a journeyman then throughout his 20-year career as a player. So things are kind of coming full circle. And Andrew Brunette, in his last 10 years as an assistant throughout the league, he's been a spark plug. The man knows offense. The Preds need offense. We're 5th worst in the league last year in goals scored a game. So now having the opportunity to bring in a coach, his first full-time head coaching job, man of the community. He's already spent a lot of time this past week meeting with fans, obviously meeting with his team and players and whatnot, but he shows how much he's really invested in the Nashville community. I think that's so big, not just helping take this team to the next level, making that Stanley Cup run, but showing that he's really, truly invested in our fan base, bringing a new energy, a new charge into Bridgestone Arena. It's going to be pivotal. And I'm really excited for the future ahead. We got the roster in place, got young talent. I think this man knows how to develop that young talent, and we're going to have a lot better chance, I believe, to make that deep run next season.
Did you mention that he scored the first goal in Preds history?
Yeah, you know what? We were texting about that a couple of weeks ago. After his time in Washington, he was signed by the new Preds franchise. And again, Dave Pulley then made the move from Washington over to Nashville, brought Andrew Brunette with him, and scored the first goal in Preds history.
I mean,
hopefully he will be the first coach in Preds history to lead us to a Stanley Cup.
I just want like little coincidences like that in this situation make me wonder if like when they're looking at the job candidates, they're like, well, we could choose this guy, but this guy just scored the first goal in Preds history. It doesn't even matter how good he is. There's just something kind of magical to it where you're
there is. And I think to your point that there is an importance to bring in someone that understands the culture that we want to build, understands
definitely
in Nashville. It's more of a coincidence they score the first goal. We need an offensive-minded coach. As I said, this man brings it. He was one of the best offensive assistant coaches in the league. He's known for developing a good power play line. Preds have been desperate for that here in recent years. So I think more importantly, that's what he does bring to the table. But there is something to be said with the history that he has with both Trotzy and Poli in the past.
Gotcha. Well, what else should we look out for with the Preds in this off season?
Yeah, so in this off season, you're going to see with the draft coming up, what the Preds are going to do with their back line. Talking the defense now, you have one of the best goaltenders in the NHL in UC Soros. The man can do it alone. The back line needs to get younger. We got aging players back there, and then also with the salary cap in question over the next few years, they're going to have to bring in young talent. So I see them either drafting defense early on or them making some free agent signings coming up here in the next couple of months. Even though the offense has been anemic over the last couple of years, I think the talent's there. The youthful talent is there, especially with a guy like Cody Glass, who I think is going to fill it up next season. Just need a head coach that really could help turn that page to develop both the young talent and the players that we already have on the roster.
Gotcha. I've got a video here of Andrew Brunette remembering the first goal that he scored.
Nice.
It's weirdly enough, it's on the Tennesseans website, which if anyone has spent a lot of time there, I can't give you your money back, but if I could, I probably would because it's so dismal. But there's an ad running. I'm going to pull that up. I think that should be interesting to watch. Let's see. Got a couple of seconds here.
I know how that goes.
Yep. All right. Here it is. Let me share. Pretty dynamic operation we have here, right, Miles? I mean, I can share videos.
I love it. I didn't know how intricate this would get. This is fantastic.
Oh yeah. This is high. This is a high dollar show. Production quality is at the top. All right, here we go.
So the goal review, of course, had to be really slow, and the tension in the building because we hadn't scored yet, and we won a game, we got shut out. Took us a little bit. It was first period early, anyways, and I think the place is ready to run. And for those that have been in that building and been in this building or that our building over the years, and the feel, it is an intimidating place to play, and it's an exciting place to play when it's rocking. And it was there was a lot of tension, a lot of quiet, but when it finally they said it was a good goal, the place blew up. So it's something I hold very dear to my heart, and again, kind of that full circle to be back here is very special.
Cradle to grave, as it were.
Right. And Davis, that's he was using the term and that's the first I've seen that video, but that he was utilizing the term I was earlier, coming full circle. That's pretty wild, and I honestly didn't know that first goal was being disputed, so they had to go on review, and then finally, once it counted, the place erupted. And that's something I'm looking forward to here this next season at Bridgestone Arena, getting some more energy, some more flavor and flair into the building, because it's just kind of been mundane. Like, yeah, we'll make the playoffs or, maybe win 1 or 2 rounds, but then we'll just kind of flame out. So
I remember in 2017, I think it was, it was 2017, the last serious cup run.
Right.
The whole town was just electric. It might have also been that I was younger then and the world was brighter, but it was like every, we would go to Martin's down on 4th and watch games if we couldn't get a ticket. And
sure.
it's one of my fonder memories of
We need it back. We need it back, Davis, and I think he's the right man for it. Not only does he, bring that experience both as a player and as a coach, but he's younger. He's only 49 years old. Love the hair. The hair he's got going, man. I got nothing like that going on.
Oh,
But
you had hair. No, you were in a hat.
yeah, I was actually. I usually do because I gotta keep this out of sight, out of mind. But on a more serious note, I think with Brunette, with a seasoned former coach like Trotzy in his first GM role as well, they're going to bring fresh ideas to the Preds, and I think it's nothing but up from here. We'll see. We got some things to iron out, not just this off season, but that first season. But I think by 24, 25, if the Preds aren't a serious contender for their first cup, I'll be severely disappointed.
Well, hey, so if you don't mind, while I'm waiting on Tom to join here, let's talk a bit about last weekend, the Indy 500, a Nashvilleian won, and you wrote about this in the Pamphleteer, of course. Joseph Newgarden went to Pope John Paul II, which I think is now just called Pope High School. When I was around, it was called we called it JP2. And another great athlete that played there was Golden Tate, who I don't know. Is he still in the NFL?
So no, he's pretty much finished up. He had time with both the Seahawks and Lions. He actually went to Notre Dame, which the most perfect Notre Dame name ever, with the first name like Golden. I actually had a high school classmate, being from Northern Indiana originally, high school classmate that ended up playing at Notre Dame with Golden Tate. So another thing that comes full circle. And for me, this meant so much to me. Obviously, I'd been a fan of Newgardens for a while, having, he'd been from the Nashville area. And then I'm an Indiana kid, born and raised. I grew up going to the Indy 500. Not necessarily a huge race fan, but it is a sporting event like no other. When you go there, just 300,000 fans. It's a stadium miles long. It just blows you away, the magnitude of that circus, if you will. So it's tradition that, myself, my family, we not only watch the race, we're prepping for the race, something like Carb Day that we go to in years past. And then to see a Nashvilleian, it's such an all-around good guy like Joseph finally take the checkered flag, get to the winner's circle. Oh, man, I was hooping and hollering in my living room watching him that race.
Yeah, it's a good. I've also been used to go. I've been twice actually. One of my favorite T-shirts is this shirt that I bought at Target. And apparently, that's where they sell the official Indy 500 T-shirt every year or something.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
The person I was staying with went and bought one for me, but I had a great time. Excellent track.
Absolutely. And to all our viewers and readers out there, if you have the opportunity to go up to the Indy 500, you got to do it. I mean, even if you're not into sports, you're not into racing, doesn't matter. It's about, soaking it all in, enjoying the views there, and just seeing vehicles going 220, 230 miles an hour. It will blow you away. Only advice, take water with you, stay hydrated. It's fun to have some drinks there, but often it does get hot. But really consider next year or the year after getting up to an Indy 500. It is definitely worth the time. Next year, I'm going to try to make it up, see if Joseph can go back to back. It would be awesome to see.
Well, great. Miles, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week. I'm gonna take you down. So any last words?
All right. Appreciate your time, Davis. Look forward to speaking with you soon, my good man.
All right. We'll talk soon. See ya. All right. Next up, I've got Tom Landstreet. Tom is going to talk to us about the debt ceiling and kind of some of the ramifications that may have on financial markets. I'll let Tom, I'm going to bring him up right now. Tom, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I can hear you too. Tom, you did a webinar yesterday on this very topic that we're talking about, which is the debt ceiling and its effect on financial markets. Am I summing that up
Yeah.
accurately?
Yes.
So, so tell us about what, what this might do to financial markets. I've heard you talk about the dilution of treasury bonds and as money being pulled out of the market into higher interest rate bonds, but tell us about it.
Well, we seem to be at a bit of an inflection point in the market and the economy, and it's a confluence of different policies that have gotten us here, if you will. One of them is the Federal Reserve's huge amount of money printing, quantitative easing, that everyone knows the term. They don't know, maybe they don't know what it means, but they've printed trillions of dollars of newly printed money and injected it in basically into the capital markets, which is the stock market, the bond market, the commercial real estate market, private equity, venture capital, cryptos, NFTs, all that stuff that has been, in a bubble, if you will, the prices have been driven by the Fed's quantitative easing or money printing. Over the last 10 years, in fact, we've had a very, very slow GDP growth historically, and the market has, doubled or tripled, and that's 100% related to the money printing. Simultaneously, the federal government has been spending money like a drunken sailor. In fact, we have a $31 trillion we have $31 trillion in outstanding debt that will never be paid back. We hit the debt ceiling, which I'm sure your listeners have been reading about, on January 19th. What that means is we can't borrow anymore until they raise the debt ceiling, which they just did by trillions of dollars. So if the Republicans are giddy about this being, a fiscally responsible act, I'm not in agreement with that at all. So we hit that debt ceiling on January 19th, which means that the government was prohibited from funding their deficit. So what that means is over the last 6 months, we have taken on another $1.2 trillion in debt with a $280 billion monthly budget deficit, meaning we're spending $280 more per month than we take in. They usually fund that through treasury auctions. They'll just sell treasury debt. It's guaranteed by the US government. It has a yield, and investors step in and buy that. It's called risk-free, a risk-free asset because it's guaranteed by the faith and credit of the US government. So this asset takes priority over all other assets. It's a better quality investment, if you will, than a stock could ever be.
What's the logic that goes into setting the interest rate on those treasury bonds? Do they take into account
the bond yield set by investors? In other words, the market itself kind of sets the rate. What the Fed does is set a policy rate or the suggested rate. But let's go back to the debt ceiling. We hit it on January 19th. And so every month we've spent $280 billion that we did not have. And we could not fund that deficit spending through treasury auctions because we'd hit the debt ceiling. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. It's almost like your credit card's maxed out.
Yeah.
Wait, you don't have any more cash, and you're not going to get any more cash for 6 months, but you continue spending freely on your credit card.
Credit card company lets you up your limit so you can keep spending, even if you have shown no indication
right.
that.
So which means that now that the debt limit has been raised, the Treasury now has to go out and issue, by my calculation, something like about $700 billion in bonds in a very short amount of time. Wow. That's an awful lot. And they're going to have to issue it quickly. I'm thinking next week they're going to do something like $313 billion worth of Treasury bonds are going to be issued just next week.
So what do you say to people? Sorry.
What that means, I believe, is that the money that's going to suck money out of other assets, other investments, other securities, like stocks. It's going to come out of something else to go into the risk-free treasury bond that yields, by the way, probably over 5%, which is a heck of a yield. We haven't seen those types of yields since the great financial crisis, actually 08 or 07.
Right.
So investors are going to go, yeah, at 5-something%, but they're going to sell something to get into that something.
So if I'm an investor, what you're saying is that as with these high interest rate treasury bonds, money is going to be sucked out of riskier assets like stocks and go into these more conservative assets. A lot of like I'd say the general populace's opinion of the debt ceiling is who cares? Like, it seems like this issue comes up, every year or so. We run up against the debt ceiling every 1 or 2 years, and there's this big to do about it. It feels, tired to some. What would you say to those people? Would you say get involved in the market, then you would care about it, or is this something that's kind of only relevant to investors or people that are, do you understand what I'm saying?
Of course. It's first off, it's complicated and it's esoteric and it's hard to understand. Second off, we go through these periods, they resolve it, and nothing really changes. We do have our hiccups in the market, and they are painful when they happen. And they're often related to this monetary policy. In December of 2018, when the stock market fell 20% in that December, if anybody remembers that, I mean, it was very much related to this same topic. In 2019, they had something called the repo hiccup, where the repo market seized up, and it was a heck of a crisis in my world. And the Fed basically came to the rescue and injected $600 billion in fresh capital into the system. By the way, all this is inflationary, and inflation is going to be the result of it. And asset bubbles are the result. And asset bubbles pop, and the bigger they are, the harder they pop. So it doesn't matter until it matters. And when it matters, it's big. It's going to be really big. And the Fed's going to then do what they always do, step in and bail everybody out. And I believe that leads to a full decade of high inflation, a full grinding decade where the Federal Reserve and the authorities at the Treasury Department are going to be fighting inflation for a decade, moving interest rates up and down, creating booms and busts. It's going to be a tough decade, in my opinion, because of all this, because we kind of come to the end of our rope. Our credit limit is extended. 31 trillion is a lot of money.
Yeah.
I mean, a very big money. So it doesn't matter till it matters. This is a giant. By the way, it's $95,000 per household. So everybody who's in your audience who has a household, you have $95,000 in debt that you're not counting in your household balance sheet that you're obligated for.
Is the IRS going to knock on my door one day and demand I pay for that?
With the new agents?
With the new agents? I saw one of the
They won't. They'll print money and just pay it for you, and that's wildly inflationary. That's what they'll do.
One of the stipulations in the debt ceiling deal I know was stripping. Biden put out that package to expand the budget of the IRS by $80 billion, and they took $20 billion off that in this debt ceiling deal that they cut. McCarthy lobbied for that, so maybe that took away the IRS agents' guns. I'm more scared of the IRS than any.
I know, but the IRS is not going to come into play here. There are tax rates. There's a statutory tax rate. Okay. That is the law. They will not be doing anything other than trying to shake the piggy bank more. Okay. Yeah. That sucks. I own my own business. I try to write off things like everybody else. Yeah. They could probably come in and get me if they wanted to. That would suck. This is 10 times bigger than that. This is the sovereignty of our nation that's literally at risk. The sheer dead weight of $31 trillion in debt, the sheer dead weight of a government that spends $280 billion a month more than it takes in, is really, there's such big numbers that your head spins and you think, well, how does it even affect me? It's gonna affect us in a very big way at some point. They will not be able to. The old Yeats poem, "The sinner cannot hold, mere anarchy is loosed upon the world, the second coming." It's one of my favorite poems. I suggest everybody read it.
Why don't we just read it right now?
What?
I'm going to pull it up right now and I'm going to read it.
It's the greatest poem for our time, I believe. William Butler Yeats, "The Second Coming."
We'll conclude this episode of the Pamphleteer Offers Hour on a William Butler Yeats poem, which I think is a great way to close it. And for those of you who roll your eyes at that, well, just go ahead and get out of here. Turning and turning in the widening year, the Falcon cannot. Gyre.
Gyre.
Why don't you read it?
Yeah.
You want to read it?
Sure.
Can you see that?
Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the sinner cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? With Pride Month. Oh, sorry. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming. Hardly are those words out when a vast image of Spiritus Mundi troubles my sight. Somewhere in the sands of the desert, a shape with lion body and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun, is moving its slow thighs, while all about it, real shadows of the indignant desert birds. The darkness drops again, but now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed by nightmare, were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle. And what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. So the most interesting thing here, in my opinion, is the falcon cannot hear the falconer. That's us.
Yeah.
And the falconer might be our God.
Right.
Turning and turning in the widening gyre. A gyre is a rotating device where it gets wider and wider. That's where things fall apart. The sinner cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. It's a very dramatic description of things getting out of hand.
The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. That is also interesting. You know, that also reminds me of this Starship Troopers, this other quote. Sorry to off rail us here, Tom, but I figured you'd probably appreciate this.
I thought I read that very well, by the way.
I thought you did a great job. I'm glad you saved me from embarrassingly mispronouncing.
Here's the point. Our government has spent, and our government has created so much debt, and they're financing it through money printing. It's very, very inflationary over a very long period of time.
The way that most people are going to feel this is, of course, inflation. Inflation is like poor fiscal policy at the Federal Reserve has resulted in inflation for the common person. And I do think that for the normal person who's not in the markets all day and who just generally hears this stuff and thinks, why should I care? I think that's probably, it's just information that you can act upon. Tom, you like this one. The junior hoodlums who roamed their streets were symptoms of a greater sickness. Their citizens, all of them counted as such, glorified their mythology of rights and lost track of their duties. No nation so constituted can endure. So, maybe Janet Yellen and Jerome Powell have lost track of their duties and are just, I don't know.
They're politicians, ultimately. Their job is and they have all the power and all the tools. It's money they didn't make. It's money they didn't earn and keep and save. It's none of that. It's our money. It's funny money to them.
Zero skin in the game, as they say.
Zero skin, and their job is to save their asses.
Well, great.
And they've got in over their heads. And,
yep.
and the tools have to be bigger and bigger each crisis.
Well, Tom, that was fun. We're almost perfectly at an hour, so I'm going to kick you off and say goodbye. Tom runs a hedge fund called N3L Capital. If you're interested in reaching out to Tom, you can look him up. Tom actually is a co-founder of the Pamphleteer, partner in the Pamphleteer. So the Pamphleteer would not exist without Tom. So you must send him. If you enjoy the Pamphleteer, you should brown nose with Tom. He'll take care of it.
I only want kudos. If you have criticism, please direct it to Davis.
Yeah. If you have criticism for his argument, tell me, and then I'll soften it and email it to him while I'm out of the state.
Yes, because I'm very sensitive. Thank you. Yes.
All right. Thank you, Tom.
Bye.
All right. Well, I didn't mean for this to happen, but we're coming up right perfectly at an hour. It just kind of shows how tight of a ship we run around here. We really, time everything out perfectly. This is a well-oiled machine, if you couldn't tell. So we're coming up on an hour. I want to thank everyone for listening. We're going to be doing this every Friday. I think that the show is probably going to evolve from here. I don't know that it'll be the same format every week. We may have some people on recurring. We may have some people not recurring, but it's going to be different. I think you got a sense of it today. It's a variety of topics. We kind of blow through them real fast. Hopefully it's good, informative, entertaining, and you feel, you feel entertained. I mean, that's ultimately what we're trying to do here is combine. Glenn Beck on his show says it's the fusion of entertainment and enlightenment, which always made me laugh. So I will not say that, but at minimum, you enjoy watching this. So thank you all for watching. That's all we got for today. I'm gonna play everyone out. Let's see, how do I do this? We'll see y'all later. Or hold on, let me start up a song. By the way, the songs have to be royalty free, so that's why you get the goofy songs. But it is what it is.